Hello everyone, my name is Rodolfo Marrero. This video is for the senior project at FIU for the computer science program, undergrad class. The project itself is the Effort Empowered Forex Trader. My component in that project is the EFEC. Here's my information. The product owner and project mentor is Dr. Masoud Sajjadi. Today we're going to be talking about the StripeService that I created. Very briefly, this is just to show you what it looks like, the Stripe controller and the StripeService, I guess. So the Stripe controller per se, it's pretty simple right now. It's on a very raw state. It doesn't have a lot of comments because I've been developing and everything is fresh in my mind. But once it gets to you, it's gonna be abundant in comments, I guess. And I'm gonna remove some of this, messages that I have over here, debugging messages and whatnot. I'm gonna refactor it a little bit to remove whatever might not be necessary as the code's been evolving a little bit. But I wanted to show you what it looks like, what it's doing. So let's start with the Stripe controller, I guess. So the Stripe controller itself has a couple views, right? The first view that it has is this one, the index view. So when you go to just Stripe, what you get is the list of your accounts. So with the list of your accounts, it gives you primary account information, secondary account information. You can have as many secondary accounts as you like. So this could be, your bank account at Bank of America, your bank account at Wells Fargo, whatever bank you have. You could have their secondary bank accounts, and you can, add more accounts, remove accounts. You can, add balance from those accounts, withdraw money from those accounts. So as you can see right now, this user ID is being hard-coded right here. This will evolve in time. I just want to show you what it does. So once you get the user ID, you pass it to this function, the account manager. It gets the list of accounts for that user and then returns it to the view. Let's go to the second one, I guess. So this one over here, I guess everything from here on is just an API for the front end to use via Ajax. So this one right here, what it's doing is saving the plate token. So there are a couple of videos on adding accounts and how Stripe and Plate work together. So if you're not familiar, what Plate does is that it facilitates the collection of bank account information in a secure manner, and then we use that information, we send it to Stripe to create a customer on Stripe and be able to charge that customer and deposit money in that customer's account and whatnot. So what this is doing is that it's getting that information, that Plate data. So I guess let's open this object real quick for you to see it. So it's just a public token and an account ID. That's all it is. So it gets that information. It sends it to Plate with some other information, some Plate secret that we need to sign it with. And then they send that information back to us. What they send back to us is the Stripe bank token ID, I guess. So we save that information on Stripe later on. So what this is doing is saving that Plate token, I guess. So let's see. So we get the Stripe bank account from Plate, then we save it on Plate. This is the service. This is a Stripe service. So we create a customer. As you can see here, there's another to do here because we have the user ID hard-coded. We have the customer email hard-coded. This will evolve. So we save that information on Stripe, and then we save that information on our database. So that's what it looks like. It just returns, an okay. Whether if everything went well, it returns an error if there is a problem. So these error codes, they help you debug. So the 7 is what I assigned to Stripe. The C stands for controller, and then just an enumeration. If the error is returned from the view, and it's a Stripe view, we'll say 7V for view. So there is another method in here, which is to create your primary account. This might not be used, I guess, in the future if we create the primary account once the customer is registered, which I guess is what makes sense. But because everything is being developed by different teams, I just develop whatever I needed, and then we can put everything together, I guess, at the later stage and change the way things work a little bit. But this is the functionality that's needed anyways. So we just create the primary account for the customer. So if the customer has no accounts, Again, this is hard-coded here. If the customer has no accounts, we just create the primary account, and we just say, hey, this is from the primary. So I guess this is running at the moment, but I'm gonna refactor this to, instead of getting this information from account manager, which is where it's at right now, to get it from account, the account object itself. So if everything went correct, then it just returns that. If not, it returns an error. And again, we just keep incrementing the counts here where the error might be at, to give you an understanding of where a customer had problem. If the customer is calling you on the phone and saying, hey, I just received this error code. So this API endpoint here is used to delete an account. It gives you the account ID for you to delete it. Obviously, you cannot delete a primary account, so it will give you an error if that's the case. I'm not sure if that, well, I guess that number needs to be incremented because it's repeated on the top, I guess. So if everything went okay, it says so, and then it just returns that information back. You can add balance as well. This one is the more complex one. So this one, it's not really complex. This one, what it's really doing is just using the StripeService right here to use as function. Says, okay, from what account am I adding it from to what account am I adding it to, which will be your primary account or the primary account for the customer. And then it just, it sends the balance to that method, and then that method just creates a charge on Stripe. So what happens after that, the webhook integration and whatnot, that's the complex part, I guess. But if the transaction happened successfully, it doesn't mean that you receive the money. It just means that the transaction happened successfully, because that transaction is asynchronous. It's not the synchronous one. It just returns an okay, and then the money could be added later to the account, assuming that the customer had enough money and the processing went fine. So this is the webhook API. This is the webhook that actually does all the magic on Stripe. So this API endpoint handles all of the calls from Stripe, all of the webhooks from Stripe, and then interprets them. So if the information is on live mode, I guess the webhook is on live mode, and the service or the endpoint is not, what this happens is this system fails, right? So you don't want to process test information on the production system. Otherwise, right, assuming it's a charge successful, you just approve the transaction. So you get the transaction ID and you approve it. And that actually puts the money and records that the transaction is completed and finished successfully. If not, there is a problem. And then, if there is any type of failure, I guess, on the transaction itself, then you just invalidate the transaction. You give it the message, invalidation reason. You record it on the database and you say, yeah, this is final. This transaction is invalid. And then, at some point you're going to have to notify the customer that that transaction is invalid. Right now, there is nothing for that. And then, if the charge is updated, I'm still reading on this, so I don't know what to do with this. Probably ignore it at this point, given that we really only care at this point if the transaction is successful or the transaction actually failed. So there is a method here for invalidating the transaction, but this is probably not gonna get used right now. This is probably gonna be, instead of an API method, well, actually this is an internal method. So actually it's implemented. So what it's doing is just calling transaction manager and say, hey, invalidated, this is the transaction ID, this is the reason, and that's pretty much it. So as I mentioned, this is what the controller is doing. The StripeService itself, which is right here at the moment, this one is the one that's actually, getting balances and, getting the plate information and saving the customer and whatnot. It's rather simple. There's nothing to it. You just need to read it, and I'll put, enough comments on it to make everything easy to read. That being said, though, I do recommend, as I mentioned before, for you to review the videos on how a Stripe and plate works, so that you get an understanding of what's happening, why certain things are done a certain way. That being said, there is a fantastic also API, the Stripe API documentation, which is rather simple. Creating a customer is simple, creating a charge is simple. They have fantastic documentation, and they also have code samples. So, I do recommend you reading it. It's a very light read, and it explains a lot on what's going on here. It might provide some clarity to this. My contact information is right here in case you have questions for me. I'm happy to help on anything that I did or anything that I might have knowledge of. The product owner and product mentor is Dr. Masood Sayadi. Please contact him in case you have any questions about the project. Thank you so much for watching.